In 1879, a woman residing in the tranquil English hamlet of Bolio started to sense a strange stirring within her frame. It was not a pregnancy, nor was it a standard malady. It was a living entity, something that possessed no legitimate place inside a human. For 7 months, her midsection expanded. Her hunger turned ravenous. When surgeons finally performed an opening, the revelation altered how an entire community perceived water, sustenance, and the physical form itself. This is the authentic medical account of Agatha Alfred, a lady who unknowingly nourished the intruder dwelling inside her. Enter the darkness, where the boundary between healing and insanity fades. Remember to follow, react, and enable notifications so you never overlook the next chronicle that ought to have remained entombed. Bolio village rested in its habitual quiet, the sort unique to rural Hampshire, a stillness born not of serenity, but of long-standing routine. It was the peak of summer, and the atmosphere sat heavy within the Alfred home, pushing the drapes against the timber. At 37, Agatha Alfred maintained the same nocturnal habits, barring the shutters, verifying the bolt, draping her wrap over the furniture, and placing the clay jug of well water near the modest iron bed she shared with her spouse, Alfred. The time had moved past the middle of the night when she woke with a parched throat. The light had extinguished, and the chamber was dim enough that she could only discern the faint silhouette of the bureau and the dark shape of her sleeping husband. She sought the vessel by sensation, the earth still chilled from the night air. The top of the water emitted a slight noise, not the gentle lap of stasis, but a movement, nearly undetectable. She paid it no mind. Her craving was stronger than her wariness. Bringing the edge to her mouth, she consumed it. The liquid descended rapidly, metallic and flat from remaining uncovered. Then, a sharp, tiny prick at the rear of her gullet. She coughed once, gulped again, and replaced the jug with a soft thud. Her hand stayed on the clay, sensing its moisture. It was nothing out of the ordinary, she reasoned. The wells of Bolio frequently held sediment. She had heard of neighbors coughing up small stones when the pulley line frayed. She swallowed twice more to banish the feeling. It faded, leaving only a thin streak of warmth beneath her ribs. Agatha reclined again, smoothing her linen nightgown, and waited for slumber. The slight aroma of moist soil drifted from the jug, a scent she recognized from years of drawing water at sunrise. Through the pane, the distant hum of insects occupied the night. She thought briefly of her child slumbering in the adjacent room, then of Alfred, whose inhalation came in rhythmic, calm cycles beside her. Nothing, she convinced herself, could be wrong. A minor irritation, perhaps some grit. The physical body, as she had heard a medic remark at the church gathering, was an engine of enigmatic fluids. By morning, she sensed a light ache in her throat and a gentle stinging along the right side of her torso. She mentioned nothing. When Alfred inquired why she was sluggish to get up, she grinned and claimed she had swallowed incorrectly. He chuckled, noting that she was getting fragile, like the city women he viewed in the gazettes. The day went by without incident. She tidied the garden, prepared loaves, and hung laundry. The pain behind her ribs throbbed once in the midday heat, but soon departed. There was labor to finish, and the body, she trusted, had its methods of fixing itself. That evening, as she got ready for rest again, she replenished the same vessel from the rear well. The cord groaned against the timber wheel. The water rose clouded, but she filtered it through cloth as was her custom. She positioned it by the bed once more, mindful not to disturb Alfred, who had already succumbed to sleep. Before putting out the wick, she glanced briefly at the jug. The clay edge was stained by fluid, the light shimmer of water catching the final spark of glow. The room went quiet again. Then came the noise. A soft, intentional splash, though no hand had moved it. Agatha froze, her fingers still near the lamp, listening. The sound returned once more, wet, quick, and faint, and then ceased. She paused a moment longer, muttered a brief prayer out of habit, and lay back. The vessel sat motionless in the gloom, but for a long duration after she shut her eyes, the slight scent of damp soil lingered. By the third week following the event with the jug, Agatha Alfred began to encounter what she later termed a movement within. It was not piercing or constant, just a subtle twitching beneath the skin of her lower torso, as if a heartbeat had drifted from its natural station. The sensation was light initially and arrived at erratic times, usually after she had dined. She brushed it off as indigestion, a frequent trouble for women of her years who managed houses and ate late. In Bolio village, medicine was a makeshift craft, a mix of home cures and myth. For tiredness, one swallowed warm cider. For lightheadedness, cider with salt, and for stomach fluttering, women were instructed to repose and contemplate joyful things. The midwife, Mrs. Elkins, was summoned quietly one morning when Agatha's unease became apparent. After a short check through the layers of her gown, the woman smirked slightly and murmured that it might be a late gift. At 37, such events were uncommon, but not impossible. Agatha offered little in reply. She did not feel expectant. She felt occupied. Her hunger expanded without cause. Portions that once sufficed barely quelled the deep void inside. She would remain longer at the bench, her utensil pausing, her gaze fixed on the air. Alfred started to observe her practice of holding her hand gently against her midriff after every meal. "You fret too much over what is natural," he remarked. "A physician would demand a week's pay to mutter the same. You have consumed too much grain and too little breeze." Yet at night, when the flames were dimmed and the house hushed, she would feel that same intentional shifting, light at first, then rhythmic, shoving upward beneath her ribs. She would rest her palm flat over her abdomen, tracking the stir as if to pinpoint its origin. It was not haphazard. It came in cycles, specifically after she had eaten. Within the hamlet, rumors started. Mrs. Elkins spoke of Agatha's state to her sibling, who spoke to the merchant's spouse, who informed the church clerk. Soon, subtle grins trailed Agatha through the square. A woman of her age, married long, now showing signs of a child. It was viewed as a point of private mirth, but Agatha knew that laughter masked discomfort. Beneath their manners lay something nearing skepticism. Her digestion failed. After specific foods, she felt surges of sickness and a heavy ache near her spine. Alfred proposed herbal tea, but she declined. One night, as she prepared to change, she saw her image in the glass. Her stomach looked slightly swollen, the flesh beneath pale and tight. She brushed her fingers over it. The skin was hot, sensitive, and underneath it a slight shift, as if something had rotated with slow care. Alfred's composure frayed as her groans grew. He shunned talk during dinner, shunned her eyes at night. When she spoke of the stirring, he told her she was inventing fantasies. "You have been reading too many of those journals," he claimed once. "Women fill their brains with rubbish and label it sickness." The next week she sensed it again, more powerful this time, a rolling weight beneath the right side of her ribs. That night, without a word, Alfred reached across the bedding and set his hand against her torso, perhaps to comfort her, or perhaps to silence her anxiety. For a second, there was only stillness. Then, under his skin, something shifted, not a shake or a twitch, but a slow, deliberate tightening, like a muscle pulling inward around a living shape. He jerked his hand away. Neither spoke. The flame wavered against the timber, and outside the breeze shook the wooden panels. Agatha rolled onto her side, looking away, eyes wide. The stir came again, subtle, measured and lingering, as if the thing within had started to synchronize with her heart. Beneath the thin skin of her ribs, a tiny shadow of motion became slightly visible. The first certain evidence, the doctor arrived from Lymington in the late afternoon, a guarded man named Dr. Edwin Gresham, who carried his tools in a dark leather grip and his doubt in equal measure. News had reached him that a woman in Bolio was sensing movement inconsistent with her history. He arrived less from care and more from inquisitiveness, for he had recently studied new European trials in acoustic detection. a way by which vibration could be used to see motion inside the human frame. The Alfred house was cramped and poorly lit. Agatha sat upright in a timber chair by the pane, white and quiet, hands clasped over the bulge at her waist. Her spouse lingered in the portal, clearly disturbed. Dr. Gresham greeted them quickly and began opening a strange apparatus, a thin, brass cylinder fitted with a plate and a hollow earpiece. He clarified that the Doppler theory, named for the scientist who suggested it decades prior, permitted the finding of motion through pitch shifts in sound. If used on the body, it could, he stated, tell the pulse of a child from the flow of the mother's blood. Agatha nodded slightly, not understanding, and reclined as told. The medic pushed the cold tip of the tool to her skin. The chamber was hushed, except for the light ticking of the clock over the fire. For a long duration, he listened. At first, he detected only the standard, the hollow rush of blood, the steady sound of breathing. But under it came another noise, one that did not match the expected pattern of a person. It was neither a beat nor digestion, but a faint, uneven rubbing, a movement with intent, stopping and starting, as if something smooth was sliding through a tight area. He moved the tool and listened once more. The sound changed spots. It did not bounce from one side to the other as a baby's stir might. It moved flat and low, almost like a serpent. Agatha spoke softly. "Do you perceive it?" Her voice was thin, almost timid. "Yes," the doctor answered, though his voice lacked certainty. "It might be trapped air. Bowel movement, nothing more." He slid the cylinder up toward her ribs. The noise followed. He scowled. The stir seemed to react. Every time Agatha breathed in or spoke, there was a slight surge in activity beneath. The pitch rose slightly, then went quiet when she ceased talking. He pulled the tool away, cleaned the brass with his cloth, and looked at the clock. At 5:43 p.m., he restarted, this time marking observations in his book with careful detail. Heart rate 78, breath calm, frequency uneven, not heart-based. Motion looks like a crawling sequence, potentially a parasite, not proven. Subject reacts, not afraid. When he pushed the tool again, Agatha had started humming gently, a restless habit, the song without a clear shape. The medic froze. Through the cylinder, he heard it. A clear shift. Something inside her frame moved nearer to the surface, following the vibration of her voice as if pulled to the noise. He jerked the tool away. The humming ended. The motion stopped. The quiet that followed was dense. The doctor cleared his throat, shut the book, and put the gear back in its grip. His face had changed, not terrified, but bothered by the failure of his own logic. Alfred moved forward. "Well, what is it, medic? Is it a living thing?" Dr. Gresham stalled. He looked once at Agatha, then at the floor. "The frame does odd things under pressure," he said at last. "It may mend itself." He took his items without another word and departed, the noise of his boots vanishing down the path until there was only the soft rustle of foliage. Agatha gazed toward the door long after he was gone. The late sun cut across the table, hitting the brass tool he had neglected to take. It shone slightly, catching the light, and from within her, she felt a tiny, intentional stir, timed exactly with the fading sound of his exit. By October, the Alfred house had shifted in pace and in hunger. Agatha's craving had become a core part of her days, automatic, constant, and totally without end. She started her mornings with loaves still warm from the bricks, eating slice after slice until the batch was finished. By midday, she needed more. In the notes that remain, Alfred recorded his shock. She consumes 14 loaves a day, 3 times over, and still claims a void. The change happened slowly, but with clear results. Agatha's body widened, not with soft weight, but with tension, as if her frame was bowing to meet some internal order. Her bodices no longer closed. The garments she wore last spring split at the seams, and yet despite her increasing mass, her skin stayed white, almost see-through. Her eyes began to retreat into their sockets, darkened by lack of rest and pressure. Initially, the hamlet felt for her. "She is carrying late," they remarked. "A mature mother must nourish too." But as the months passed, pity turned to doubt. Victorian manners allowed sickness to be discussed, but not gluttony. For a woman to eat without limit was a character flaw, a loss of restraint, improper for a wife. The merchant's spouse began to curb her sales. The baker's lad whispered to others that Mrs. Alfred ate like a man who was starving. Alfred, drained and unsure, tried logic. He concealed food, swapped bread for boiled tubers, thinned milk with water. None of it helped. Agatha would get up in the middle of the night to hunt for food, her gait light but focused, the timber groaning as she moved. The next mornings, he would find bits spread across the bench and the faint mark of her palm pushed into the dough she had ripped. Every meal brought both ease and terror. After she ate, the stir inside her torso grew more vigorous. Not chaotic, but structured, as if whatever lived there had come to anticipate the food. She started pushing her hands to her stomach after eating, murmuring softly that it calms when satisfied. The villagers, hearing through the gaps in windows, spread stories of her insanity through the district. One night, Alfred sat across from her as she ate, observing in silence. He noted that she did not bite as one who is hungry, but as one doing a chore. Bite, swallow, inhale, repeat. The cycle was mechanical, devoid of joy. Between gulps, her throat moved slightly, as if something within shifted its spot to catch what she took in. He left the table before she was done, unable to witness more. By the first frost, Agatha's body had changed in ways the glass no longer hid. Her belly had become tight and curved, but the rest of her seemed to waste away. The bones of her wrists stood out sharply. Her face looked pinched, her cheeks sunken. She often spoke of heat in her midriff, saying that food disappeared too quickly. On the night of November 12th, after her third serving, Agatha felt a sudden surge of sickness. Alfred discovered her leaning over the sink, white and shaking. She tried to talk, but instead threw up forcefully. The matter was normal at first, bread, fluid, water, but as she cleaned her face, something tiny and pale stuck to her lip. She poked it with a shaking finger and pulled it away. A scrap, thin and bent, nearly transparent. Under the light, it glistened slightly, a scale no bigger than a nail, bordered with a faint golden hue. She said nothing. She hid it in a cloth, folded it twice and put it in the box by her bed. That night she did not eat, but the stir inside her arrived just the same, steady, patient, and terrifyingly alive. By the initial weeks of December, the change in Agatha Alfred's frame had hit levels that defied both domestic logic and medical belief. Her abdomen, once flexible, had become shockingly swollen, a mound of skin pulled thin to transparency. The flesh showed the colors of strain, deep purple marks spreading from the center like rays. When the lamp glow hit it sideways, one could see the faint glow of veins, bulging and uneven, as if her frame were drawing a map of a foreign structure within. Her medic, called again from Lymington, noted the shifts in his book, with forced calm. Subject shows extreme abdominal swelling not matching pregnancy or a cyst. Surface is tight, skin is hot, light pulsing seen in right section, internal movement seems deliberate and independent. He noted further that her organs seemed moved. The stomach shoved up toward the chest, the bowels crushed against the spine. Yet in all other ways, she stayed conscious, clear, and hauntingly still. Alfred, however, was no longer still. He shunned her eyes at the table, shunned her bed at night. When he did observe, he did so in pieces. The edge of her arm, her fingers, the knot of her hair, never the middle of her body. The sight of it, stirring of its own will, took away his ability to speak without shaking. Midwives, once happy to help, now denied entry. One admitted the sight stole her sleep. Another said she feared catching a plague, though none could label the malady. The hamlet avoided the trail by the Alfred house. Mothers told their girls not to wait at the fence. In Bolio, bad luck was thought to travel by sight before it ever traveled by contact. Inside the home, the days went by with a grim monotony. Agatha ate little now. The hunger that had once driven her had turned into exhaustion. Her body, it seemed, had hit its capacity for stretching. The skin pulled so tight across her middle that she bled in thin red streaks. Underneath, the stirrings were visible, rhythmic, steady, focused. Alfred told the doctor later it was like the surge of a sea beneath a sheet. One afternoon during a check, the medic tried touching. He pushed lightly along the center, his fingers meeting the tension of the skin. Underneath, something moved back, not as a muscle reacts, but as a beast might when poked. The doctor pulled back at once, his cool failing for the first time. "Stirring is not a reflex," he wrote. "It seems to react to touch." Lasted about 6 seconds, moved upward. He ordered her to stay in bed, fearing she might burst. Agatha was shifted to the top room and placed on total rest. Alfred carried her meals up, his hands shaking so much that she sometimes took the plate from him. She no longer requested help with her clothes. When she spoke, it was of small matters: the noise of the breeze, the lost clock on the shelf, the flavor of the well water she no longer tasted. By February, the body had become a scene of movement. The bulge rose and fell in slow swells, sometimes crossing from one side of her frame to the other, warping her form into strange shapes. Alfred noted it once in secret. The skin lifted as if a hand underneath pushed out. Once I believed I saw the curve of its skull. On the night of the 12th, Agatha had what was called a seizure. Her breath grew short. The top of her abdomen moved wildly, as if something within fought to get out. Alfred held her as she struggled for air. Then, for a second, the stir stopped. The skin pulled to a halt. From beneath, hard, short and certain, something pushed out. The shape was clear, a jaw hinged and slim, forcing against her skin with terrifying detail before sliding back into the gloom within. When the stir ended, Agatha cried without sound. Alfred, unable to look, turned to the wall. Outside, the snow started to drop, covering the world in a quiet that felt for the first time like a shield. The woman arrived by coach, wrapped in thick wool and barely awake from fatigue. The trip from Beaulieu to Winchester, about 14 miles of rough path, had harmed her state. Her spouse, Alfred, went only to the entrance and did not go in. According to the nurse's log, he looked drained of feeling, as if long without sleep. Inside the surgical hall, 6 doctors met under the gas lamps. Dr. Silas Morton leading, Dr. Lionel Crisp, resident medic, Dr. Hartley Wren, birth expert, and 3 young students from London, recently moved to the clinic for study. Their talk was kept in part by the secretary, Dr. Morton. The subject shows abnormal abdominal growth not matching pregnancy or a fluid tumor. Previous local checks report independent motions seen under the skin. Dr. Wren, could it be a hydatid cyst? The parasite sometimes mimics life. Dr. Crisp, then where is the heat? The lady's pulse is firm, temperature normal. A cyst would not thrive without making her ill. Dr. Morton, we may be seeing a parasitic case of unique form or, as suggested, a case of extreme nerves producing a physical lie. Student, the stir, sir, was seen by several locals. Dr. Morton, locals are prone to tales. There was a gap as the surgeons stood around the table. Agatha lay still, eyes partly open, her face thinned by the months of trouble. The swell beneath the linen rose like a hill, moving slightly with every breath. Dr. Wren, if it be nerves, the flesh should not move on its own. If it be a tumor, it must be removed. And if it be a parasite, Dr. Crisp, cutting in, then we are sheltering something that should not exist in a human. The lead surgeon made the call with typical speed. We start. Surgical cut at sunrise. The room was set in the usual way. Tools on trays. Blades cleaned by fire. Cloths soaked in chemical. A fire burned low in the grate. The light above threw long, warped shadows on the floor. At the start, Dr. Morton made the first cut along the center, shallow and firm. A thin drop of blood appeared, normal. Then came a sound not found in medical books. A faint, squeezed hiss, as if air had been let out from inside. The surgeon stopped, blade still ready. Dr. Crisp, Could it be a gas leak? Dr. Morton, perhaps, yet it is hot. Do you sense it? Truly, a wave of heat came from the cut, not fever-like but natural, pulsing softly against the room. Nurse Clay, holding the bowl, moved back. The smell of blood had changed, swapped for something earthy, moist, the scent of dirt after rain. "Student Linton, sir, the surface is shifting." Morton looked down. Under the open flesh, a stir happened, subtle, sliding, impossible to pin down. He reached for the tongs, his breath held. Then the nurse fainted. The bowl hit the floor with a hollow noise, water running over the tiles. Dr. Morton did not move his eyes from the cut. His hands hovered an inch over it, shaking slightly. "Dr. Crisp, sir?" No answer. The room went silent, except for the soft, rhythmic noise. Not a breath, not a heart, a slow internal stir, patient and focused. At 07:24 a.m., according to the log, Dr. Morton suddenly stopped and stood frozen, eyes wide, his hand over the wound. His breathing had ended. The entry stops there. The rest of the page in the medical book is empty. Only the ink mark remains dried on the side where his tool dropped. Following a short break due to a helper fainting, Dr. Crisp took the spot at the left of the table. Dr. Morton went on with a focused widening of the center cut about 6 inches below the chest bone. Upon splitting the skin and tissue, a hole was found holding a strange fluid of yellow-gray color and earthy scent. Heat of the fluid measured higher than the room by about 8 degrees. At 07:29 a.m., a stirring within the opening was noted, slow and turning, accompanied by a low internal rubbing sound. The first thought was common bowel activity. However, closer look showed a separate form coiled tightly and partially fixed into the lining of the stomach cavity. Dr. Morton used spreaders to open the site. Upon meeting the steel tools, the form reacted with a shrinking movement unlike any human tissue. Dr. Wren observed clear scales along the exterior, stained dark by fluids and gore. At 07:38 a.m., the creature was entirely pulled out, alive but very weak. Its frame gave off small, jerky twitches. The patient's blood loss stayed under control. Notes during the removal were taken by Dr. Wren. Organ moving was obvious. The liver and stomach were shoved upward. The gut path had slid sideways. The strange beast looked well fed. Its middle was swollen with unchewed matter, likely from what the lady had eaten. Signs of the creature eating itself were seen. The animal was put in a clean bowl for look. Upon meeting the air, it moved wildly for about 90 seconds before fading. The feel of its scales shifted as moisture dried, turning from tan to a ghostly grey. Talk started on what it was. Dr. Crisp thought of a rare rat snake, though the color did not match local types. Dr. Morton guessed it entered through swallowing, perhaps foul well water or a dirty clay pot. No record of such a beast living in a human was found in any British medical book. At 07:44 a.m., the snake died. Its tail, in a final twitch, hit the edge of the bowl and went still near the lady's hand, which rested open on the sheet. No other reaction followed. The scent in the room stayed, a mix of bile and earth. Tools were washed in acid. The creature was locked in a glass jar with spirit for later study. At 07:52 a.m., Dr. Morton gave the final note to the clerk. Surgery a success. Host unconscious. Blood flow steady. Strange beast taken out whole. Cause of entry unknown. Lady alive. Animal dead. He then told them to open the drapes to let the winter light in. The room stayed hushed except for the light snap of ice against the glass. A noise noted in the log, though not explained. The lady survived the heavy surgery. The wound was shut with silk thread. A small gap along the bottom was seen after 3 days. A mild fever of 101.6 degrees lasted for 10 days, with some rambling. Her appetite was poor. The smell from the cut was like dirt, not rot. Her pulse was shaky, her breath thin. The first month was full of heat, sleep, and quiet. Agatha's body looked small, her skin like glass, her bones sharp under the bedspread. The staff noted she rarely spoke except in rest, when she mumbled about something turning. Her middle, though mended on the outside, stayed sore. Every try at eating caused sickness. Alfred came twice. Both times he stayed by the door, cap in hand, speaking only to the medic. He did not go near her. The marriage, as one nurse said, felt already dead and preserved. By midsummer the heat left. The wound closed well. No swelling was found. She gained little weight. The patient was called bone-thin and pale. A strict plan for recovery was set. Broth, oats, light tea, and slow walks with help. The lady shows a refusal to look at her stomach, declines help with washing, and begs to keep water from her belly. She shows great fear near mirrors. Her rest stayed broken. The staff heard her gasping at night and the sound of tapping on the metal bed frame, a jumpy move, perhaps a nerve shake. When asked, Agatha said she dreamed of weight under her ribs, a feeling of movement without a path. Public interest in her case grew. Students asked to watch. Many medics came from the city. The case was used in a meeting as a rare example of a living parasite. Papers told only the dry facts. A woman survived an odd internal state. In Bolio, however, her name was spoken in shadows. Mothers told kids not to drink from open jars. Agatha's hunger came back in the fall. She ate bits of bread, but only when alone. She said she feared being seen while swallowing. One nurse saw something odd. Whenever the lady drank water, her heart sped up fast, as if the act woke a bodily memory. Upon taking in fluid, the lady shows a high pulse, a 20-beat jump in 30 seconds. Her face flushes for a moment. She claims a light stirring in her upper belly for a few beats. No move could be seen from the outside. Nerves, not the body, were blamed. Agatha's own notes from this time show the gap between her health and her brain. The medics say, "I am whole. They do not see that I stir when I am still. Sometimes I feel it shift when I drink. It waits for that. It knows the noise." By the end of the year, she was sent home. Her frame had mended, but her eyes were watchful, the look of one listening inside for peace. She left the clinic in early 1881, taken by her husband, who did not hold her arm. The final note in the book by Dr. Crisp shuts her file. Patient shows doubt toward her own frame. Health okay, mind unsure. The file was locked and hidden. Her bed, cleaned for the next person, had a faint ring in the middle, not blood, but a pale stain, as if something had leaked up and dried in the dark. The coach that took Agatha home arrived with no fanfare. The driver would not help her inside, saying she was best left to herself. Alfred met her at the door, offered his arm, then pulled it back when she ignored it. Their child, Mary, 11 years old, watched from the pane, holding a broken doll. She looked not at her mother's face, but at the long, dark scar under her dress, the mark of the work that gave her back, yet took her away. The house felt different. Dust sat on the shelf. The air smelled stale, as if the rooms had been empty for years. Agatha stood in her bedroom door for a long time before entering. The bed felt too big, the jug too familiar. The clay pot stayed on the table, the rim stained from time. She did not touch it. In the weeks that followed, she started a cycle of cleaning. Every morning she boiled water and washed the floors with lye. She burned old cloths and got new ones, washed twice. Alfred complained about the cost, but did little else. When she cooked, she checked every fork for dirt. Even the bread was pulled apart, the bits scattered, as if she feared something lived in the grain. Neighbors who came by left feeling odd. They found her calm but cold, her moves like a machine. When they spoke of her surgery, she acted like it happened to someone else. Soon the visits ended. Alfred stayed at the mill until dark. He did not go in her room. Meals were silent. Agatha at one end, Alfred at the other, their girl between them, watching her mother chew and wait. If water fell, Agatha would jump and wipe it fast, staring at the spot until it was gone. By midsummer, her health looked fine, but her way was guarded as if she hid a secret in her bones. She walked by the woods every day on the same path. Locals whispered again. They said she spoke to no one and covered her mouth to block the dust. A lady claimed she saw Agatha at the well, staring in for minutes, then leaving without a drop. Inside, Mary saw it all. She copied her mother's quiet ways. One day, she found Agatha in the bedroom by the jug. The lamp was off. Window light hit the pot, showing the cracks. Mary asked, "Mama, what are you seeing?" Agatha did not turn. Her eyes were on the water's top, though the jug was dry. Then Agatha whispered, "It is quiet now. It must be sleeping." Mary backed out of the room, leaving her mother still as a statue. That night, Alfred found the door open, the lamp cold, and the house hushed, except for a light drip in the bowl, though no one had used it. For 30 years after, Agatha lived in hiding in that house. The locals forgot their curiosity, yet her name was a warning for kids at the well. The Alfreds lived inside, drapes stayed shut, visitors stayed in the hall. Meals were silent. Mary grew up to look just like her mother, thin and slow to speak. She never married or left. Alfred aged fast, his hands shaking. He sat on the porch, pipe cold, staring at the road. The house fell into a slumber. The clock stopped. Moss grew. Agatha kept her ways to the end. She cleaned, boiled water, and ate bread in milk. She checked every pot, then set it back. In her 67th year, Agatha's health failed. She slept often and seemed at peace, though her breath had a rasp, like stones turning. On March 3, 1912, Mary found her mother by the bed, head down near the old jug. Her body was still warm, but her heart had stopped. The people at the wake spoke of a smell, not of death, but of wet soil after rain. It stayed in the floors long after she was buried. The doctor blamed the damp ground, though it had been dry. The next morning, Alfred shut the house. He and Mary left at dawn. They were never seen again. Within a year, ivy took the walls. The house leaned as if the dirt were pulling it down. Decades later, the case was found once in an old medical book. A note said, "Case 49B, Agatha Alfred. Final state, unknown." The house still stands, sunken and silent, and on some nights the air smells of water and earth. Agatha lived, but she was never alone. Her story was lost in books, remembered only by fear. The house waits.